What day is today? It's 31st of March. That's right. Tomorrow's April Fool's Day. I should know this because the whole point to today's episode is going to be greatest April Fool's jokes ever. Excuse me. So it's the 31st. Tomorrow is April 1st, and we are officially beginning the second quarter of the year tomorrow. Hope your first quarter went according to plan, and I hope that your second quarter exceeds expectations. So let me post the question for the day, or pose the question for the day, not post because I'm not posting it. I can hear myself popping my peas. Um, what's the best excuse you ever came up with to just ditch a day of work? You may want to post anonymously if your boss is watching or on Facebook. But what is the best excuse you've ever had or ever used for ditching a day of work? Uh, I can't think of one that I've ever done. I'm sort of, I wouldn't say anal about it, but I have a very old school work ethic, and you're not going to catch me cutting. Well, I'm essentially self-employed now. I technically I do work for American Financial, but I'm straight commission. So if I take a day off work, if one person that affects is me, well, and my customers. But when I was working at Liberty, I never took a day off just to, never called in sick just to goof off. I've taken personal days to do business, but never. So anyway, if you've ever cut, let's expand that. How about ditching school? You ever cut school? So bleep bloop that comment section. And let's see what your best I missed work excuse was. And now, since we're talking about cutting school, I worked school in there without even realizing it. I'm going to tell you a story of the greatest April Fool's joke ever played, at least in my personal experience. And here's the cool part. The teacher involved in this, we're friends on Facebook, Mr. Farmer. So I went to school at my middle school. I went to George Reed Junior High School. And back then they called it junior high. I think now it's middle school. But when I was in 8th grade, Mr. Farmer was my homeroom teacher. Now, to tell you about Mr. Farmer, Mr. and Mrs. Farmer both taught in the Colonial School District in Newcastle, Delaware. Both were beloved, and still are. If you go on their Facebook pages, there's testimonials from thousands and thousands of kids that they touched in their work. I can tell you that Mr. Farmer literally saved my life when I was in 8th grade, 7th grade too. I had him for a couple classes in 7th grade, but he was my homeroom teacher, and he taught social studies, and I had him for 2 classes, I believe, plus some electives. So, and now I know he did this for a lot of people, so it wasn't just me, but I guess he noticed something was off, and maybe there was an arm around the shoulder that I wasn't getting anywhere else. And so he provided that. And he did that for a lot of people. And so did Mrs. Farmer. I proudly say that I have stitched thousands and thousands of sewn on thousands of shirt buttons and stitched up jeans that I tore because of taking home ec with Mrs. Farmer, who taught us how to sew, amongst other things. And Mr. Farmer, we reconnected here on Facebook when I first moved to Liberty. So I first moved to Virginia to work at Liberty. So 2014. So it's been 11 years we reconnected. They've retired to Georgia, where they play golf every day, and they are incredible golfers. But we reconnected. I actually wrote a story about him in one of my books about how in a different day and age in this country, teachers were allowed to care that much. Because I know I have friends that are teachers, like, yeah, you don't put your arm around a kid now in class, not very often, because you really literally run the risk of a lawsuit. But okay, all that preamble to explain who this was. So I'm in 8th grade, and February of that year, we're out at recess, and there's the backside of George Reed. There was a parking lot and some tennis courts and a curb, and then there was a grass area, and then the street was Roosevelt Avenue and Penn Acres. And a bunch of us boys were pitching pennies against this curb. And we'd been warned we weren't supposed to pitch pennies, right? So apparently, morality in 1976, 77. No. Yeah, 70. So it would have been February of 77. Morality's still able to be taught in junior high school back then. And they told us we could get in trouble for pitching pennies. Okay, so we're pitching pennies. It's because the rules were mere suggestions sometimes. So I can't remember who it was. I know it was me and Buddy Deary and a guy named Chris something or other who I really didn't like. He was kind of weird, but and somebody else. Anyway, so we had this teacher, Mr. Nye, and he taught science. And we used to call him Wimpy because he kind of looked like the character Wimpy from Popeye and had a very unique style about him. And looking back, with nothing but fondness. But at the time, he was, you're a little scared of him, and we would make jokes about him behind his back and everything. He sort of waddled. I think he had a bad hip or a bad knee, and he kind of wobbled when he walked. He was very much like that, the Wimpy character, except he didn't wear a hat. Well, we're pitching pennies, and I'm on a roll, and here comes Mr. Nye. I want you, and you, and you, and you. Follow me. He was known for that. If you were in trouble, he would do the point at you and follow me. So we're just like, oh boy, here we go. It's the Bataan Death March down at the principal's office. And the principal of George Reed Middle School at the time was Ben Davis, Mr. Davis, who wore a flat top haircut that I remember and was very stern, but was actually a really nice man. But he obviously didn't want you to know that when you're a prepubescent or pubescent kid in junior high school. As a sidebar, one of my best friends, my friend Corey, that I played hockey with at Liberty, as a school teacher, he just retired. He told me he waited on the substitute list for 7 years just to not take a junior high school teaching job, because when you have kids going through puberty, it's that's the most unruly bunch of kids, right? You can have your elementary school kids. They're just young babies hopped up on sugar. You've got your high school kids that are cocky and figuring out life, and they can be trouble. But when you get that group in the middle that's going through puberty and hormonal changes and everything else, yeah, you better bring a gun and a drink. So anyway, we get sent to the office, and Mr. Davis gives us a thorough tongue lashing. And then he says, I'm going to have to think about what your punishment's going to be. And I think the reason he said that was because there really wasn't a policy. I mean, he technically hadn't violated any school rules. It was just a morality issue that they didn't want a bunch of gambling going on at junior high school campus. So nothing happens. This is February. I'm scared to death, right? I'm thinking, oh, when I go home tonight, they're going to have to call my parents, and I'm going to get it. Well, nothing happened that day, and nothing happened the next day, and nothing happened for a week. And I forgot about it, like the rest of us did. Whole month, the rest of February, nothing. The whole month of March, nothing. April 1st, go through the day. We're all pranking each other and playing jokes like kids will do. We get done. I'm in homeroom, and I'm in Mr. Farmer's homeroom, and I hear, the afternoon announcements. And then right before the afternoon announcements, Mrs. Mauger, it's funny, I remember these names. This is over 50 years ago. That's about 50 years ago. Mrs. Mauger, presses the button and, excuse me, Mr. Farmer, can you send Craig to the office? My heart sank. Like, what did I do? I pretty much had forgotten about the pitch and pennies thing. So Mr. Farmer's like, yep, sure. So he tells me, go head up. So it's like you could hear Pray for the Dead playing in the background. I'm walking up to the principal's office. Like, so Mr. Farmer's, George Reed had 3 wings. There was there was the big area. There was a cafeteria, and there was a big auditorium for assembling, and there was the administrative offices and some other stuff. And then there was a wing, big long wing for each grade, 6th, 7th, and 8th. 8th grade was in the middle wing. So Mr. Farmer's class was about halfway down that middle wing. And I remember because there was a bathroom dead across the hall. So I go out in the hallway. I'm walking down, and I'm almost to the end where you turn right to go to the offices, and I hear Craig. I turn around, it's Mr. Farmer, and he goes, "April Fool." I looked down the hall, and Mr. Nye got his head poked out his door, and he was all the way down the end. He's just belly laughing. I can't remember who else. I think Mr. Gates was laughing. I mean, they were all in on it. All of them. The principal, Mr. Davis, was in on it. Mr. Nye obviously was in on it. Mr. Farmer probably put it together, knowing him. And they didn't do any of the other boys. It was me. And I think it was just because my personality. I loved a good prank. And for a second, I was pretty hot about it. And then I just roared laughing. It was the best joke ever. I mean, I thought I was gone. Oh, I left out the best part. As I'm walking out the door. I'm sorry, it messes up the whole joke. As I'm walking out, I said, "Mr. Farmer, what's going on?" He goes, "Something about pitching pennies." Right. So now I'm walking down the hallway thinking, "Oh, he finally decided on punishment. I'm going to get kicked out of school or something." And then he waited till I got almost to the end and he said April Fools. So I guess that's not as effective because I forgot the best part of it. But oh my gosh, that was the best. It's still to this day. I've never been a part of an April Fool's joke that was that good and had that much work involved and all the people. The only thing I can think of is that Times Sports Illustrated created a fictional pitcher for the New York Mets and actually had a front page, like a cover and everything. The whole thing was an April Fool's prank. If you remember that, his name was Sid Finch. And they claimed he was throwing the ball 151 miles an hour, and he pitched with only one shoe on. He wore a size 17 shoe on his left foot, and he couldn't find any, so he pitched barefoot. And it was crazy. It's a crazy story, but people actually believed it. Mr. Farmer and I relive that every year on April 1st. So this will be live telling that story. So I'll just make a mention of it tomorrow as well. That's my favorite of all time. April Fool's pranks. I can't even think of any more I've done that were even close to something like that, where it was just so many people in on it and so many, and really did. I mean, I bought it like hook, line, and sinker. He had me. He just had me. I thought I was dead. I was like, oh, if they waited 2.5 months to come up with my punishment, it must be a doozy. If they're calling me out of the class to come up to the front, it must be bad. Like these things are going through my mind, and I'm just like, it's over. It's all over. Anyway, that's my April Fool's story. If you have any cool ones, bleep bloop them in the comment section below. On the mortgage front, nothing new. We did get some decent numbers on the 10-year treasury today. So you might see rates creeping, but they're just not. I don't know, folks. I don't like to be a purveyor of doom, but I do think we're heading into a recession at some point later this year or the first of next year, in which case mortgage rates really drop in a recession. Because here's why, for people that don't know. When you go into a recession, investors look for safety with their money. And so they will buy very safe investments, such as treasury bonds or mortgage-backed securities, because there's always a risk factor. There's always a percentage that will default and go into foreclosure. But for the most part, it's a very stable, very dependable investment. Doesn't yield the highest rates out there. I mean, right now, you buying bundles of mortgages, you're getting something, 6.75 to 7.5. You got, because they bundle all different. It's not everybody has the same rate in a bundle when they buy these things. So, on average, if you average them out, you're probably getting a 7% return, which is pretty good. So, in a recession, money will move off the stock market. That's when it starts getting iffy, and they'll put it into something more secure, more stable. It's not yielding, 12%, 15%, but it's not going to go down. They'll hide their money there basically. And then when things start clearing up, they'll sell their shares of those, their coupons in those mortgage-backed securities to somebody else. And I think we're going to see that soon. I think we're heading for a recession. I think it was unavoidable, um, given the actions of the last 4 years. Well, and this is not a political thing. It's because economic policy varies from administration to administration. And I think Joe Biden's economic policies were bad. I just not, and this isn't like I hate Joe Biden. Nah, it's nothing like that. It's just, listen, you can just look back and go, listen, this policy is not that good. And it's all the other politics stuff aside, we were set up for a recession, I believe. And I don't mean deviously set up. I just mean, I just think his philosophies and the people that he listened to were not good. They did set us up for a recession. I think we're heading for that. But then, I don't know how many recessions we've been through in my lifetime. We always survive them, come out stronger on the other side. So I think mortgage rates are going to start coming down, creeping. They always rise quickly and fall slowly. So don't expect to see threes again either. That's as much mortgage as I'll talk. If you guys want to talk more, you can always reach out to me if you got a question about mortgages. But best April Fool's joke ever. Richard Farmer, my beloved 8th grade homeroom teacher and social studies and a couple other things, played the greatest joke of all on me. And rewind it and watch it again if you want to hear it. So, all right, you guys have a great Monday the rest of the day. Tomorrow's April, and we begin quarter number 2 for 2025. Make it a successful one. See ya.